Hello everyone, Gary here with POL 493, and today I'm going to give my last discussion board post for week 8 in this class. So I'm going to discuss the 5 things that I found most interesting throughout the class and elaborate on those things. So let's go ahead and get started. The very first thing is Wilson's dichotomy. This is the third time I think that I've been able to talk about Wilson's dichotomy while I've been in this class. And I'm very thankful for that because I think that this is something that I've become very proficient at talking about now, and I've become pretty good at it. And instead of just memorizing the material, I've been able to, I think, really absorb it, which is something I'm very happy about. And not this, that doesn't just apply to Wilson's dichotomy, that applies to all of these. So Wilson's dichotomy is the belief that politics and administration should be separated, and that is because they are so different. We don't want administrators to be affected by the political realm. We don't want people who are not involved in the agency, who don't exactly know the needs or the situation of the agency, to be able to influence it in any way. Well, that sounds great because we can appoint the best and brightest then to the administration. They can lead it in the most effective way possible, almost like a business is the idea. But that doesn't exactly work. I think that anybody who's been around for long enough has figured out that administrators have to be part of the political realm. They have to speak out about what the needs are of their agencies, and that involves being political in some sense. And so it's impossible for us to ask administrators not to be in the political sphere. For example, if we had a fire chief who never ever spoke to the citizens at all, that he wouldn't be able to relay what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. And so I think we have to come to accept a little bit broader sense of what the dichotomy is asking of us. We want to try and keep them out as much as possible, but it needs to be understood that they have to be involved in some sense. So we'll move on to the next one, and that is Simon's bounded rationality. Simon believed that humans have the ability to make rational decisions only under limited circumstances. There's a certain threshold where people can no longer make good decisions. Maybe they're good or good enough is what he says, but good enough means that we're not looking at all the alternatives. We're not figuring out the most efficient way to do things. And I think that he's correct when he says that. It's impossible for us to always make the most effective decision. So Simon's bounded rationality really holds true, I think, especially for our management. There's a lot of managers out there who get a lot of things thrown onto their plate at once and very quickly, and it's hard for them to always rationalize the best route. And so they have to use that concept of good enough to move on. The things that maybe are more important, those are the ones that maybe get that more rational thinking. And so in that sense, it really makes it really is accurate. So this is something that I'll probably take with me and remember as I meet managers in the future. The very next thing I'm going to talk about is Weber's bureaucracy. Weber didn't believe bureaucracies should hold the same negative connotation that we have today. When we think of a bureaucracy, we usually think slow or inefficient, and that is probably accurate in today's world. But in Weber's bureaucracy, he thought of it as the most efficient form of an administration. It's an administration that's large enough to be able to operate at maximum efficiency. Every employee is a full-time employee, is trained well, is working for the needs of the organization to meet certain goals, and every policy is defined within everything that they do is defined within a policy. And so I think, especially within government, that is exceptionally accurate. Government jobs generally speaking, there's always something in policy that they can fall back on for any reprimand, any promotion. There is a certain set of rules or guidelines to follow, and if there isn't, then maybe that has been pioneered by a certain individual, and I can guarantee you there will be a policy written in the future for it, so it doesn't happen again. The very next thing is the reinforcement theory. This is a motivational tool. It's something that we can utilize to get people to do things we want or stop doing things that we don't want. So as an example, we have somebody who is working very hard to provide the best service to our citizens as possible. We need to reinforce that thing that they're doing to be successful. And by reinforcement, they're going to feel good about that. They're going to want to keep replicating it and keep on receiving that reinforcement. Now, oppositely, we have somebody who's late all the time. We first want to maybe start with telling them not to, maybe reminding them to always be on time, and hopefully that works. But if it doesn't, then we can provide negative reinforcement where there's punishment involved, where we're going to see people maybe receive docks in pay or demotions, things that we don't like to think about ever doing. We don't want to ever have to be a boss in that sense, but when somebody, when it has to happen, it's important that we follow through with those things so that we don't set a precedence that we don't care. Everybody needs to be accountable, and providing positive or negative reinforcement is the way by which we can do that. And then the very last thing that I'm going to talk about is federalism. And federalism, I think, is what I'm going to end up sharing with friends and family. I got to learn what federalism was before this class started, but I still think of it as one of the most interesting things that I've learned throughout my tenure here at CBU. And I say that because I didn't recognize the fact that state governments had such power. I didn't know that the federal government had to try so hard to get state governments to do what it wants. There's a certain set of things that the federal government can do that are defined within the Constitution. We have expressed powers that they can utilize. They can garnish taxes, and they can they can wage war, but they can't get state governments to follow policies like marijuana laws and immigration laws without maybe providing some sort of monetary fee for them. So there is funding that's actually received, monetary funding for state governments for following the agenda of the federal government. And I think it's very interesting that that's the case. I would argue that most other governments around the world don't have to go that route. Sheer force is all that they utilize, whereas we actually utilize money as our method. So that's it. It's been great having you guys all in the class with us. I learned a lot, and I look forward to the future classes here at CBU. Have a good night and a good week.